All right, today we're gonna just look at these 3 splices: the Neo Splice, the Vapor Lux Splice, and the Meta Splice. And we're gonna see how they fly and if they even have a place in the bag. So on these first shots, I'm trying to go about 250 to 270 through this gap and then let it fade out. And so starting with the Neo Splice, it flies straight pretty far, but as expected with the splice, and like I've seen, it just nose dives into the ground and wants to die. The Meta Splice flew pretty similar and actually did push about as far before actually fighting out and down. And then, yeah, this Vapor Splice, I threw it a little low, but it still had the same amount of fight towards the ground, enough to catch edge quick enough to still like pick up and skip about the same distance, about 260. It's taken quite a bit to pump these out there. And then I did a slight turnover trying to get into this spot you'll see I have highlighted. And with the Neo Splice, I give it quite a bit of room to work. It obviously fights out pretty quick and then fights back through those double mandos really reliably. Same thing with the Meta Splice. It actually kind of swings a bit longer than I expected it to. I thought it would have a bit of a tighter like swing out of that Hyzer angle, but it didn't, but it still came back reliably. But this Vapor, this was the one that like, it just kept, I didn't think this would be the most stable, but it just like flipped out into its like super crazy overstable fade. And so far this Vapor seems to be the one that's the most stable. And then I just did just a Hyzer backhand, the splice, out on Hyzer. It does like, it will carry out left, but you'll see that like it has such a steep angle, it's not gonna glide for very far before it tries to pull to the ground. Same thing with the Meta Splice, like they fly almost the same on this Hyzer angle, and almost all of them, they have about the same amount of push and glide before they like dive into the ground. But this Vapor Splice, again on the Hyzer, about 260, 270, it just like fights to the ground so much harder, so much quicker, but still reliably, so it's not a bad thing. And then I went into just trying to pump them as far as I could. Again, I throw the Neo Splice out there with a little bit of ante, knowing it's just not gonna like go into it much. And so it fights out and then pushes to about between 340 to 355. But that took everything I had. And then the Meta Splice, I kind of didn't put it too flat, so it went about 320, 328, but still just pushed out really far, really well, but just doesn't glide very far before it wants to die into the ground. But this Vapor, just significantly more overstable. Again, even on a little ante, this is where you see the difference between it and the Neo. It on that ante just pushes out and then fights out quick and then like has its skip. And then we went into just 3 backhands. One backhand was a little tunnel shot, and this first one, the Neo, put it on a pretty steep angle, and you see it fights out way quick, again about 240 feet I think it was, and just fights back right into the center where you want it. The Meta, I threw it way too low to the ground, and it still just rode the ground and flipped up before hitting, and then caught edge and actually flared way too far away from where I was trying to be. And then the Vapor Splice, I actually pushed it out a little too far left, but dude, it's just crazy. You see it push out and immediately fight back down to the ground. So it has a place. It's just really hard for me to justify maybe taking out another disc. So anyways, we get into the second to last, and this was meant to be just a big sweeping forehand Hyzer, trying to get it between these trees, trying to go around them and back through them. And so I was able to hang all 3 splices out left, and all of them, like when they push out as far as they're kind of able, before swinging really hard back to the right and down. Pretty much this flight, you'll see almost the same flight pattern for all of them. Really reliable forehand, swing out, and you can like accidentally push it too far out left, or maybe a little straighter than you expected, and it'll still just fight back into the area you're wanting. So that was about a 260, 270 foot forehand, and it was just glorious. And so my final thoughts is, even after throwing my FD3, the new C-Line like FD3 from the mystery boxes, on forehand and backhand, the biggest notable difference, for those of you who have not thrown them and seen this difference, is that the FD3 will push out significantly farther. For me, that would be another 60 feet before entering into the fade part of the flight path, and then just have an even harder like dive down into the ground than the FD3 will. And so regarding these three, I think from anyone who's thrown Discmania knows, the Neo will beat in significantly quicker. So I'd imagine this one will have a bit more carry to it sooner. So these seem to start off in just the right spot, because this is my first time throwing the Meta, and it flew like my 5-round used Neo Splice. And this Vapor, being the most like grippy, I thought would be the most unstable, or essentially less stable of the three, but it was the most stable. So unless you're forehanding like 400 feet or 360 or higher, I'm not sure what these could be used for. And so it may just cause a little frustration unless, again, you're using it as a utility disc. I expected it to be like an FD3 and it wasn't. So for now, I'll put this one in the bag, but I just don't know or see myself using it in a tournament yet because I'm not too familiar with its ground play. But I really did like the disc, and let me know your guys' thoughts and experiences with the Splice so you can have a better understanding of it. Thanks for watching.